Antalgic gait is one of the most common forms of altered gait in patients presenting to the emergency department and primary care offices. It refers to an abnormal pattern of walking secondary to pain that ultimately causes a limp, whereby the stance phase is shortened relative to the swing phase. In a normal, healthy person, gait is a cyclical and symmetric process. However, when an abnormality is present in one of the joints, muscles, or bones of the complex system that regulates gait, this process is disrupted. Finding the source of this disruption is essential to accurate diagnosis and effective treatment.
So in the current patient, you can tell that they don't want to spend time on their left leg. They spend most of their stance time on their right side. However, when you can see the patient coming back here, you can tell that the swing phase is enhanced on their affected side, and their stance phase is decreased on their affected side. This could indicate a pain in the leg.
I also wanted to see if the sheriff would agree that he felt there were so-called signatures left by the perpetrator at the crime scene. But before we go there, let's become familiar with what a signature is. Jeff Reinick is an expert.
When they talk about signatures as it relates to a crime, they're talking about behavior or actions on the part of the offender that might be unique to that offender. I think signatures are very important. The FBI has a database called the Violent Crime Apprehension Program, and it invites local law enforcement to enter their violent cases in there with the intent that local law enforcement would have the opportunity to recognize similar behavior from an offender, let's say across state lines or even across the country. And so when you talk about signatures, that tells me that this offender engaged in behavior that was noteworthy by the investigators or by the crime scene investigators.
The former prosecutor of the case, Robert Ives, told us they existed.
He told us that, in his opinion, there are 2 or 3 signatures left by the killer at the crime scene. And you said you agree in part with that?
Mm-hmm. A crime scene will tell you a story. Just stand back and observe, watch, see what it's going to tell you. That's why evidence is important. Once you put all those pieces of evidence together like a huge puzzle, it can tell you that story. And so, yes, I agree with what Prosecutor Ives said, that there's things that existed there at that crime scene that when the day comes, put them all back together and here's the story it's going to tell.
And all of our energy and focus has been towards getting the information to law enforcement so they can make an arrest. Well, now they've done that, and we're now, and we always knew it, but we didn't know what the task would next be. I mean, we knew it was going to be helping the prosecution to get to a, to prosecute it and, and get to a conviction. So we're still processing that, what's our role going to be there in that? In the prosecutions, how do we continue to help? Like I said, it was kind of a strange feeling that when they told us, hey, we've got somebody detained and we're going to make an, arrest him. It was like, okay, I guess all that work has started to pay off. We've gotten them the information they need. It was like, okay. I guess all that work has started to pay off. We've gotten them the information they need.
We have stayed nice and steady. So when he called me and said, hey, we're supposed to meet with law enforcement in an hour, it was totally unexpected. We weren't expecting this. So it's like, what? Disbelief, like, okay, I'm hearing this, but it's a process. It was totally unexpected. We weren't expecting this. It was totally unexpected. We weren't expecting this.
As Richard, Rick, Allen's attorneys, we have received multiple requests from local and national media for interviews and comment since the unsealing of the probable cause affidavit. It would be virtually impossible to comply with these requests and continue to focus on the merits of Rick's defense. Therefore, we offer up these thoughts. We do not want to try this case in the media, and we intend to adhere to the Indiana rules of professional conduct that provide guidance on pretrial publicity. However, the police and prosecutor's office have conducted many press conferences over the last 5+ years of this investigation and following our client's arrest. On the other hand, Rick's ability to assert his innocence has been reduced to only one short post-hearing press conference. Accordingly, we feel it appropriate, necessary, and within the bounds of our rules of professional conduct to make a few comments concerning the probable cause affidavit and Rick's innocence. Rick is a 50-year-old man who has never been arrested nor accused of any crime in his entire life. He is innocent and completely confused as to why he has been charged with these crimes. The police did not contact Rick after Libby German and Abby Williams went missing. Rather, Rick contacted the police and voluntarily discussed being on the trail that day. Like many people in Delphi, Rick wanted to help any way he could. Rick contacted the police to let them know that he had walked on the trail that day, as he often did. Without Rick coming forward, the police probably would not have had any way of knowing that he was on the trail that day. Rick volunteered to meet with a conservation officer outside of the local grocery store to offer up details of his trip to the trail on the day in question. Rick tried to assist with the investigation and told police that he did recall seeing 3 younger girls on the trail that day. His contact with the girls was brief and of little significance. Rick does not recall if this interaction with the conservation officer was tape recorded, but he believes that the conservation officer scribbled notes on a notepad as Rick spoke to him. Rick shared his information with law enforcement officials. He went back to his job at the local CVS and didn't hear from the police for more than 5 years. The next time Rick heard from the police was in October 2022. This was approximately 2 weeks before a contested sheriff's election and within days of a federal lawsuit filed against the Carroll County Sheriff's Office by its former second-in-command, Michael Thomas. In the lawsuit, Thomas claims that he, Thomas, had made suggestions and offered assistance in the investigation of a high-profile child homicide investigation, but those suggestions and offers were rejected by the sheriff. Thomas further claimed that the sheriff and others in the department feared the disagreements with Thomas would become publicized as a result of the political campaign for sheriff. Thomas claims in the suit that he was ultimately demoted and replaced by Tony Liggett, who later that year won the 2022 election for sheriff. Furthermore, Thomas claims he was also removed from high-profile cases. Rick was ultimately arrested on or about October 28, 2022. In the 5+ years since Rick volunteered to provide information to the police, Rick did not get rid of his vehicle or his guns and did not throw out his clothing. He did not alter his appearance. He did not relocate himself to another community. He did what any innocent man would do and continued with his normal routine. The probable cause affidavit seems to suggest that a single magic bullet is proof of Rick's guilt. It is a bit premature to engage in any detailed discussion regarding the veracity of this evidence until more discovery is received, but it is safe to say that the discipline of tool mark identification, ballistics, is anything but a science. The entire discipline has been under attack in courtrooms across the country as being unreliable and lacking in any scientific validity. We anticipate a vigorous legal and factual challenge to any claims by the prosecution as to the reliability of its conclusions concerning the single magic bullet. On Rick's behalf, we argued to have the PCA unsealed. Rick has nothing to hide. As importantly, we were hoping that we would receive tips that would assist us in proving up his innocence. Not surprisingly, we have been inundated with tips from a variety of sources, all of which will be vetted by our team. Although it is the burden of the prosecutor to prove Rick's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, the defense team looks forward to conducting its own investigation concerning Rick's innocence. We appreciate those who have reached out to support his cause. The prosecutor mentioned at the last hearing his belief that others may have been involved in the killing, yet there was no mention in the PCA about a second suspect involved in the killing. The defense is confused by such discrepancies in the investigation and will be in a better position to respond as more discovery is received. Rick Allen owned a Ford Focus in February of 2017. His Ford Focus is not in any way similar to the distinctive look of the PT Cruiser or smart car that was described by the witnesses. It seems that the CCSD is trying to bend facts to fit their narrative. At this point in time, we have received very little information about this case and look forward to having something more to view than that which was offered up in the sparse PCA. Moving forward, it is our intent to scrutinize the discovery as it is received and give the necessary attention to the volumes of tips that we are receiving. To the extent we continue to discover information that points to Rick's innocence, we will offer up this information to the public so long as we are not prohibited from doing so as a result of the recent request by the prosecutor for a gag order or by the Indiana Rules of Professional Conduct. Signed, Brad Rosie and Andrew J. Baldwin.
Similar to what I just said, there's specific pieces of information that we're not discussing. The best example that I can give you is if somebody is a victim of a burglary and then they're murdered, everybody wants to know how they were murdered. If we go into the details and we say they were stabbed twice in the back and they were shot in the head, then everybody hears that. And then when we get tips, people tell us that, and the tip is useless. We're keeping information that will only be known by the person or by who that person told. Yeah.
I want to talk about Flora.
He's talking about a deadly house fire in the town of Flora, just 10 miles from the murder scene in Delphi. The fire happened 6 years ago inside this house, trapping 4 young sisters who all died. Investigators say the fire was arson. The deaths are homicides. The day of this press conference to announce an arrest in the Delphi murder case, Doug Carter says this is where he came first, at this crime scene, which is also still under investigation by Indiana State Police.
I sat across the street in that gravel lot and looked at that house that has the same exact remnants of a fire that we saw now almost 6 years ago this month. Boarded windows and black soot on the outside, and it just broke my heart that it was still there because I hadn't seen it in some time. The cases the investigations are very different, but the tragic outcome is the same when there's loss of life. And I hope that one day we can do the same thing, but we have to hear from people. And I hope that one day
State police said they have not gotten many tips on who set the fire that killed these girls, but tips continue to pour in on Delphi.
Gotten several calls this week, since this broke, that, hey, what about the little girls in Flora? Are you still working on that case?
You know, I wasn't going to say this today, and I've said it to a couple of networks, but when I took the long way here today, I stopped in Flora, And there's a gravel lot across from that house where those 4 little girls died. And I said to myself, I hope that one day we're doing the same thing for them. Still alive and well.
Security Flora. This family has also supported the Flora girls. Their 6-year milestone of that fatal fire, those 4 girls. And this family has also supported them. What message do you have for them? I spoke to Gaylin on Friday. She was very happy to hear that there would be good news. Now hoping that maybe there will also be good news in her case. Any words for your fellow Carroll County family that also had tragedy strike before your loss?
Don't give up hope. You know, that is why always, you know, for a minute you're happy that he's caught. But that is almost immediately I went to all the people that we have met. We've met so many families that are walking the same walk and have walked it for many years, longer than us. And while you're so happy that we got this arrest, you wonder, why can't we get them all? You know, I only want all those other families to be able to feel the same way. There has to be a way. There has to be a way to catch all of them.
One of the times you had posted on Facebook,
want everyone to remember that they love their mama and their mama loved them.
Remember them day by day, minute by minute. Why? Why did that house have to burn down? We didn't deserve that at all.
Kiana, Kiara, Carroll, and Connie all died in the rental home where they lived on East Columbia Street.
Of questions.
The 6-year mark is approaching on a tragic fire here at this Flora home that killed 4 girls. Several months after their deaths, investigators ruled the cause of the fire as arson. The victims were Kiani, Carroll, Kiara, and Kiana. When Kathy Clendenning helped to start a reward fund in 2017, she never imagined the person responsible would remain on the loose nearly 6 years later. The Flora 4 Angels Committee has raised about $18,000 since then for information leading to an arrest. But under an agreement with the committee's umbrella nonprofit organization, the Flora Community Club, that money after 5 years must be donated to the Flora Monroe Township Volunteer Fire Department. Clendenning is now pleading with fire officials to donate that money to a separate state reward fund.
There's still someone out there. There's still someone that I know could turn in a tip. I am begging you to turn the funds over to the state fund and please continue this reward for the girls.
In a statement, a lawyer representing the Flora Community Club said the organization is legally obligated to distribute the funds as promised. Indiana State Police confirmed the Flora 4 Angels Fund is separate from a $5,000 reward fund handled by Indiana State Police. The fire remains under investigation, and anyone with information should call 1-800.
I have some information I would like to share with you regarding the deadly house fire on November 21st, 2016, located in the 100 block of East Columbia Street, Flora, Indiana, 46929. News agencies reported Carroll County Sheriff's Officer Drew Yoder and Flora Police Officer Josh Dissinger were first to arrive on scene of a working residential house fire. The officers attempted to make entry into the burning structure to rescue the occupants inside. The rescue attempt was unsuccessful due to the heavy smoke involved and resulted with both officers requiring medical assistance for the injuries they sustained. Later, Officer Drew Yoder was recognized for his heroic effort with his attempt to save 4 girls, and Officer Josh Dissinger cited as a hero, rescuing Officer Yoder, assisting him out of the burning residence.
Yoder joined the Sheriff's Department in May of 2015 as a full-time merit deputy. Before that, he was a reserve sheriff's deputy, and right now, he is also a part of the Cutler Democratic Township Volunteer Fire Department. Sheriff Tobe Lesenby says he wasn't the least bit surprised by Yoder's actions.
Drew in particular, he's a go-getter, and trying to save those lives, and so it didn't surprise me when I got the call. I knew he would be one of those to do that.
Lesenby says even though Yoder was unconscious, he didn't give up the fight.
When they were trying to attend to him, he kept, in essence, fighting them, not necessarily in a bad way, but, he was trying to, and I could see, that fight in him. So that's what led me to believe everything's going to be good.
Deisinger joined the police department 11 years ago. Flora Police Chief Paul Redmond says Deisinger was awarded the Medal of Valor after his heroic actions at another house fire several years ago.
Josh is kind of like our local Superman. He's unfortunately, however you want to look at it, a lot of these kind of things seem to happen when Josh is working, and he always responds in a very brave and heroic manner.
Redmond says many people in the community look up to Deisinger and see him as a role model.
He did what he has done, what he will continue to do. It's a model for anybody going into this profession or any kind of a first responder profession, whether it be fire, EMS, law enforcement. That's the kind of guy you want on your team.
What has not been reported? Flora Fire Department already had a fire engine and firefighters on scene. Officer Yoder, on his own accord, disregarding the fire department orders to stay out of the way, grabbed an SCBA off the Flora fire truck and placed onto his body before he entered the burning structure. Officer Yoder did not have any other fire department issued PPE on at the time, nor is he a member of the Flora Fire Department. Officer Yoder is a member of another fire department located in Carroll County. Officer Yoder knows as a trained firefighter, he should have never entered the burning structure without the proper gear and by himself. Sometime during Officer Yoder's attempted rescue, his face mask came off and was overcome by smoke inhalation. Officer Dissinger ran inside to assist Yoder's retreat, disregarding firefighter request to stay out. A seasoned Flora firefighter was on scene with all PPE attire, assisted both Yoder and Dissinger to safety. The actions of these 2 officers compromised and delayed rescue efforts by firefighters to the 4 girls. EMS on scene focused all their effort and time to evaluate and treat both law enforcement officers, delaying treatment to other victims. Firefighters eventually made rescue attempts after clearing the obstruction of both officers to the 4 girls, bringing each one outside. EMS on scene could not revive them after focusing their treatment first to both officers. All 4 girls' bodies were removed from the scene and transported to Flora Fire Department garage floor. This was conducted before Carroll County coroner could arrive on scene. The removal and transportation of bodies before a coroner initially conducts his investigation is a violation of Indiana code. Fire personnel are trained to make a temporary morgue setting, minimizing the view of bodies from the public. Why did they choose to ignore their own training or follow proper procedures? Their bodies then being placed on the concrete floor of the fire station compromised any forensic evidence that might have been present. First fire investigation occurred immediately after extinguishment, salvage, and initial overhaul preparations were completed. Fire investigators from responding mutual aid departments assisted Flora Fire Department investigators. Their initial investigation determined one origin of fire starting behind the refrigerator, commenting the refrigerator as a possible cause. The firefighters who initially investigated this fire were from multiple fire departments located in Carroll County and were trained investigators from a former Carroll County Fire Investigation Task Force. Law enforcement reported later an accelerant was detected on Officer Yoder's clothing that was retrieved from the hospital. The accelerant detected could be from cross-contamination from the SCBA he was wearing. The face shield, mask, and air fittings get cleaned and sanitized after every use. The bottles, straps, webbing, and cushions very seldom get cleaned from fire to fire. Cross-contamination could potentially exist between clothing and equipment. Investigation of house fire continues days and weeks later. During this time, the house was never properly secured from day one. Certain civilians were seen coming and going from inside the residence. Josh Ayers was one of them. Side note, Josh Ayers is owner of this house. Josh Ayers, former president of Flora Town Board. Josh Ayers, owner of Maytag Appliance Sales Distributor in Carroll County. Josh Ayers, owner of Flora and Delphi True Value Hardware Store. Josh Ayers provides many used appliances he received from customers throwing out their old appliances from his Maytag business to his rental properties. Josh Ayers sold a used refrigerator to Flora Fire Department that quit working shortly afterwards and was then replaced with a new one from a different vendor because he would not make right by it. Josh Ayers, Flora Town Board President, approved an invoice in the amount of $2,275 for legal representation for Fire Chief Adam Randall during law enforcement interviews October 16 through October 19. Adam Randall, son of Dennis Randall, former Indiana State Fire investigator. Adam was truly affected by this fire. At one time, he changed his name on Facebook to a Muslim name and tattooed his entire back with images stemming from this fire. I know he is withholding information about this fire and he is slowly spiraling downhill because of it. The guilt he is experiencing is eating him up inside. Why would the fire chief need legal representation? I would think the police and fire departments share the same goal, justice for those 4 girls. Why are my tax dollars being spent for this? Not one town board representative will answer this question. Current Fire Chief Todd Trent is also withholding information, being so close with both Adam and Dennis Randall, he chooses his words very carefully not to reveal the truth. Officer Todd Trent assisted each firefighter who gave a written statement about this fire on what to write and what not to report. Feels like the town has a dark secret and no one wants the truth revealed. A peer review was conducted by the Indianapolis Fire Department. What they don't know is they received revised documents instead of originals for their investigation. I reside here in this small community and must remain anonymous.
How often do you think about this case?
My number one worry throughout the course of the day, because it's such a violent world we live in, is my hope and my prayer for people like Sergeant Jeremy Pierce. They get home every day, you know. We've got a lot of work to do in the way in which we treat other people. But I can't. There's not many waking minutes that I'm not thinking about those 2 little girls.
Before we came out here this morning, and as of right now, multiple fire trucks are here. This is actually as close as I can get to the scene. I was asked to stand right here while they work on the house. Smoke is still billowing everywhere, so it does seem like a very serious...
Sergeant and her 17-year-old daughter both died in a house fire on Thursday. Firefighters responded to the fire around 2 a.m., but found the home of Sergeant Stephanie Thompson was fully engulfed in flames. The fire was too much to rescue her and her daughter, Maya Thompson. Thompson was a 23-year veteran of the state police and wife of the White County Circuit Court Judge Jason Thompson.
Story that we've been following for some time right now, that house fire in Monticello. In that fire, a mom and a daughter died.
13 News has confirmed special agents from the ATF, Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, is investigating last month's fire. There's still no official cause to what sparked the blaze, which killed Stephanie and Maya Thompson.
Stephanie, a sergeant for the Indiana State Police, and her daughter Maya was a junior at Twin Lakes High School.
Sergeant Stephanie Thompson. She works out of the laboratory division, a polygraph operator. So walk me through this a little bit. If somebody requests a polygraph from you, either us or a city or a town, is there certain criteria that has to be met before that even takes place?
Yes, a full investigation needs to have happened. They should be bringing us one of the highest likely individual that maybe committed the crime.
So this is not going to be a start of the investigation?
No, this is very much towards the very end. They might have most of them have already been interviewed several times prior to coming to us. It's completely voluntary.
I want to tell you why. Because of what my eyes have seen and what the eyes of these fellows behind me have seen that you haven't seen. About 3/4 of a mile from here. There is not a day goes by at the end of my day that I don't think is tonight the night that I'm going to get a call that something bad happened to somebody that I represent, an Indiana trooper someplace in Indiana.
Sergeant Stephanie Thompson, thank you for being here, Stephanie. I appreciate you coming down here this morning, all the way from the Lafayette area, right?
Yes.
So what got Stephanie Thompson interested in becoming an Indiana State Trooper way back when?
I think I was about 7.
Really?
And my mom got stopped by a state trooper. I grew up in Versailles, so of course there's a post.
Did you remember?
I have no idea.
Okay.
But I just thought it was the most cool thing on the earth, and that just pushed me that direction. I had 2 uncles that were also police officers for Madison and state excise, so it just kind of guided me that direction.
So were you in Versailles when you went to the academy?
Well, I went to ISU, Indiana State University, and graduated. So I technically applied out of Terre Haute area, but I grew up in Versailles.
So where did you get assigned to when you got out of the academy?
Lafayette.
Lafayette. Yeah.
Never left.
It's been hard in America. 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 It's been
It's been tough, feeling sad. It's been hard in America.
Unbelievable loss just because of the type of people they were.
Sheriff Bill Brooks says the Thompson family was involved in the community. Maya was a standout swimmer. Stephanie was with Indiana State Police.
Being in the positions that they were in public all their careers, so it takes a toll.
Drift away all of the pain. But it seems there's more to do. There's more to love we've yet to find.
And the state fire marshal has not yet said what caused that deadly house fire.
We have our initial investigators working around the perimeter, taking photographs, initial documentation of the scene. We have some of our other resources. We have an accelerant dog. Not to presume that there's anything, but we always bring a dog in just to run a perimeter check. And again, photographs and scene documentation.
Neighbors say the residents moved in here about a year ago, had a child still living at home, the father well known in the community, and their first hint of trouble is when the power went out overnight. And their first hint of trouble is when the power went out overnight. And their first hint of trouble is when the power went out overnight.
Those neighbors also told me it didn't take long for the 2 a.m. fire to consume the house.
Because of the severe damage to the structure, it's going to take a significant amount of time for the cause and origin determination. We try not to have any preconceived idea when we come in, and looking at the facts of each individual incident. And again, we're in our early stages of this, so.
Yes, worked road, I think it was pushing 7 years. Then I transitioned into investigations, did that for almost 3 years. And then I was asked to come down and be on the executive protection, did that for about 9 months with Governor Daniels.
Okay.
And then a position back up in Lafayette opened. It was the crime scene investigator. So I applied for that and was accepted and did that for about 6.5 years before then transitioning into polygraph.
Things in the past where you've addressed this person or persons directly, is there anything that you'd like to say to them?
They're watching. They're watching. And we'll meet them soon. We'll meet them. Why? Why? See, this is Carroll County, and specifically the Delphi is that represented evil, complete evil amongst humanity, and that little county has been dealt several blows. Just a few months before that, there were 4 little girls killed in a house fire that was intentionally set. So that's any county in America. And I have this extraordinary responsibility to bring closure to that, and I'll work towards that end until my final day.
And do you think this person may strike again? Is there fear in the community, or do you think this was an isolated incident, or do you know that much?
I don't. It would require a subjective opinion based on what I think. Again, what I think, not necessarily what I know. But I think if we were speaking in very broad terms, a person wouldn't do this just one individual, one time. So if they haven't before, they likely will again. We cannot allow this person to coexist. Until there's somebody arrested, we're interested in almost everybody. because I refuse to accept evil as a standard bearer in American society, not here. People have oftentimes asked me, why is this so personal to you? It's personal to me because those two young girls were everybody's daughter in this beautiful place that represents the very best of humanity. And look what happened. That's why it's very personal to me.
Listen, if you broke enough rules, if you lived under certain conditions of lawlessness long enough, you'd adjust to that new world order, if you will. That's what the sociopath does. And so they're the person who someone who said he was actually a great kid until he got to high school. And then it seems like you got him with the wrong kids. That feels more like the sociopath. Wow. Okay, that's almost like a training that might happen from within the family, within their community, within even the job they get, some cases even within some form of military training.
When he was 13, because life happens and our family is just, we take care of each other. When something's wrong, we take each other in and we fix it, and that is how we fixed it.
If you broke enough rules, if you lived under certain conditions of lawlessness long enough, you'd adjust to that new world order, if you will. That's what the sociopath does.
Years old. She was a fourth grader at an elementary school here in town. She was reported missing at 9 o'clock Sunday night by her father when she failed to return home from her aunt's house on her bicycle.
Police are looking for the person or people responsible in the death of 10-year-old Lily Peters. Police believe the girl left her aunt's house to bike home but never made it.
Police found Lily's bike in the woods near a walking trail, and this morning her body was found in a wooded area near that same trail. With a suspect on the loose, the area schools are telling parents to pick up and drop off their children instead of letting them walk or bike home.
Good evening, everyone. I am Chief Matt Kelm with the Chippewa Falls Police Department, and I'm providing an update on the homicide investigation. I first want to express my deepest condolences to the family and friends of Lily Peters. I will be able to answer a few questions at the end of this briefing, but please bear in mind that we are very early in this investigation, and I am limited in what information I can provide so as not to compromise the investigation. At this point, we do not have anyone in custody, and I want to reiterate that people remain vigilant as there could be a danger to the public. We have established a tip line, and we encourage anyone with information. Our investigators are following up with leads and tips actively. The people of our community are honest, hardworking, and kind-hearted. It is almost impossible to believe that something this horrific could happen in our city, and an event like this threatens our sense of security. However, I believe we will come together as a community to overcome this fear. A number of resources are being utilized in the search for answers in this tragic case. We currently have representatives from the Wisconsin Department of Criminal Investigations, the Wisconsin State Crime Lab, as well as many local law enforcement agencies assisting in this investigation who are working tirelessly to uncover the truth. We also have victim advocates who are working with the family. I would ask in closing that if anyone has any information about this case, that they please reach out to that tip line. And again, that's at 1-800-263-5906. There's a few questions. I will try to answer some of them.
Chief Kelm.
Well, the simple fact is that we have not made an arrest in this case, so the suspect is still at large. So in that case, we just want to be extra vigilant and make sure that if there are any tips, anyone has any information, to go ahead and call that tip line. We have a lot of investigators that are working on those all the time. At this point, no, we're not saying that. We're only a day into the investigation. This is a major incident, and we want to make sure we do it correctly, properly. And at this point, we don't have that information to give out. Right. At this point, we really can't say because, again, we're developing that information right now. Our investigators are following up on leads, and I don't really have anything to give out on that particular case.
Scary for this community, for parents especially. What can you say to parents in Chippewa Falls tonight?
What I would say to parents in Chippewa Falls is that Chippewa Falls is a safe community. This is a very rare occurrence. However, we have to be cognizant to the fact that it will require some additional vigilance here today. So I guess that's what I would say at this point. Good evening. Thank you for coming. I'm Matthew Kelm. I am the police chief for the Chippewa Falls Police Department, and I'm providing an update on the homicide investigation. First and most importantly, earlier this evening we arrested a juvenile suspect in this case. The suspect was not a stranger. The suspect was known to the victim. We do not believe there is any danger to the community at this time. While nothing will bring Lily Peters back or change what happened, we are very grateful to be able to deliver this news for the family and for the community. Driving through town and through our communities, we can see the purple ribbons, and honestly, I would expect nothing less from the Chippewa Falls community, Chippewa Valley, and our surrounding communities. A tremendous amount of work has gone into this investigation by a large team of investigators, including those at the federal, state, county, and local level. Law enforcement has been working on this case 24 hours a day since this call came in less than 48 hours ago. First of all, I want to thank the community for the over 200 tips that we have received. These tips were critical to solving this case. Our security team has and will continue to hold the crime scene, which is the wooded area around the footpath between the north end of Grove Street and the Line & Kugel Brewery parking lot. This is important to the integrity of the investigation, and we would ask that you continue to avoid this area. The Wisconsin Department of Justice Crime Lab processed the crime scene last night, At that time, the body of Lily Peters was removed by the coroner's office. A forensic autopsy is being conducted. Investigators executed a search warrant at 422 North Grove Street. Evidence was collected and additional interviews were conducted. That is all the new information I have at this time. There is still much work to be done.
Take a train ride just to see you. Ride for hours just to please you. You don't know how much I need you. 'Cause you're my home away from home, away from home, away from being alone.
Learn just how big of a task I think that investigators are up against. We're at the Delphi city building. We had seen police coming and going this morning. We are told dozens of investigators are checking out hundreds of tips that have been relayed to the police. At the same time, they're still investigating the crime scene. It's a couple of miles outside of town. It is a remote area well off the public trails the girls were hiking Monday afternoon before they disappeared. The FBI is working with state and local police. I am told they're quite literally turning over every leaf in that crime scene, looking for any possible clues or evidence. They're also interviewing friends of the two girls for any information that might be helpful there.
Chief, you not said that this is your panel. Talk about the impact this had on your town.
It's had a terrible impact on our community. The people who participated in the search, people who have participated in all the efforts to try to find the victims in this case are very much appreciated. But I know that it's had a terrible effect on our people, and we are grieved that this sort of thing would happen here in our community. I am pleased to see the community come out and help us the way that they have. I'm very pleased to be part of a community that has done everything they have done to help us out in this case.
Going forward, you're going to do everything, obviously, you can to find out who was involved in this. And earlier when we talked, pretty much all the law enforcement's been holding back tears because these young girls and families and the whole search has really taken a toll on you. So are you going to do everything, exhaust every option, just like you did in the search, to find out who was involved in this?
Yes.
Anything to say to the community?
Huge thank you.
Yes, thank you for all their help.
Should people in the community be afraid right now based upon what you've seen and you know?
I think people are smart enough in our community to draw their own conclusions about what they should feel and shouldn't feel. Our people are very smart. We have a very good community, and they are very strong. And they are able to draw their own conclusions about this whole situation, I think, quite successfully. Thank you for the question.
Because, and the reason I ask is I hear the words foul play suspected. And people might be wondering if there's somebody running around this community preying on people that they need to be afraid of.
Mm-hmm. I understand what you're saying.
Should they be?
I do. I think people are able to draw their own conclusions about this situation, and they are smart enough to figure out that what the situation warrants them to think. So that's all we have to say about that.
And you said you scaled back the search completely. So the hundreds of people, even they were coming up a little bit ago, can I offer my help? Can I get back out there? At this point, do you guys not want more people heading out in that area? What's the advice for people who do want to be involved in the search?
They can continue to help in the way we need the assistance at. I am not at the scene, and I'm not aware of what's going on out there at this point in time, so I can't really say what we're going to use them for. We may be just telling them we thank you for your help, and we may just be sending them back. So, you know, again, it's we believe what you believe what you can, and then we got to go with the truth that we have. So that's what we're working on.
away armloads of potential evidence and seize Logan's truck. Police, though, warned against rushing to any conclusions.
This is part of the investigation. This is not our first search warrant. We've done several others other than this residence. We've done some polygraphs. We've done all kinds of things to other people.
Mike Patty, Libby's grandfather, drove through the search area today. We called him for reaction. In a text, he replied, "My reaction is I hope the investigation, wherever it takes police, leads to the arrest of the person or persons involved."
But as we have gone into the investigation and have talked to other people, things are just not adding up.
When the girls' bodies were found, did the case immediately switch from missing person to double murder case, or was it a suspicious death type of investigation?
No, any one of those will always be the worst case scenario, and then we work it backwards. So that was a double homicide.
How quickly was the scene secured and an investigation of two deaths started?
Almost instantaneously, as I understand it. I got up there about 2 hours or so after the girls were found, and at that time it was completely sealed.
I don't remember where I was at that point. I was like all over the place. I went to my grandpa's house, my other grandpa, and then after that I'm like total blur until the funeral. And after the funeral I can talk about whatever. But before then it's like everything's a little fuzzy stuff.
Yeah.
The family did tell you that this did often happen with the girls. They sometimes didn't come home. They might be at friends, and that Libby was wanting to go to her mom, so they may have ran off.
We had spoken to, obviously, the family a number of times as far as other locations the girls could have went to, and we had learned as far as their history, whether it be they went to each other's homes and not communicated that to other family members, that had happened in the past, but there had been times where the girls had been elsewhere and had not told, whether it be parents or grandparents or any other family members where exactly they were.
Okay, and then on to the next question. When asked if the community was in any immediate danger, your answer was no. Can you explain that, please?
Sure. I've been with this agency in particular for 32 years, and so I had a lot of feeling and real faith that we were not dealing with an ongoing event as far as someone going out there and committing this crime again. One thing I do want to speak to, though, is that more of a concern for me as a law enforcement leader was that we obviously did not want to create a large amount of paranoia and concern where individuals or families would have to constantly, if you will, be looking over their shoulder all the time, wondering, who's that behind me? That's no way for a community to live, in my opinion. And so, we wanted to convey that message that this was solely related to, or isolated, if you will, to these individuals involved. And so there was no factual information to believe that we were dealing with an ongoing situation with someone out there in the community. So I felt assured that, and still feel that way, honestly, that this is something that the community is safe in what's taking place in Carroll County.
Tobe, everybody wants to know why you called off the search for Libby and Abby.
Sure. First of all, that was not a individual decision made by me, but rather we had a meeting amongst several emergency responders, which included police, fire, EMS, and also other community volunteers. And the consensus was that to make a temporary stop of that search and then restart the search early the next morning. I do want to stress that even though we formally had stopped that search, there were still people out there searching throughout the night, and we were aware of that, particularly community volunteers. And we were not in a position that we could tell everyone to stop. And basically, we made it optional. If they wanted to stop, they could, and get some rest and come back out the next morning, as many did, to start that search over or up again. And so that was not an individual decision, as many may feel, but rather a decision made by several community members and emergency responders.
And were there also some fire officials and some LE out there that night as well?
Yes, that's correct. There were many, particularly firefighters and law enforcement, that were actually out there looking.
What would have changed in the investigation for your department to say we now need to release this sketch that we've had?
Information from tips. That's all I can say.
And when it comes to sketches, Superintendent Carter urges people to pay attention to both.
A sketch is not a photograph. It's something that a person remembers about what they saw. And I believe that when we identify who this person is, and we will, that we'll be able to take those two sketches and fold them over each other and put them on the individual's face.
2 years later, a very different sketch of what investigators believe the killer looked like.
That was a very significant shift for us. And we had fully anticipated the criticism. But remember, a sketch is not a photograph. And I think eventually what we'll be able to do is put the face of the murderer up in between those two sketches, and we'll be able to merge them together and become one.
Sketch is not a photograph. Right. It's something similar to a resemblance. And the likelihood of this being something between the two is probably pretty strong. But again, that's a subjective opinion based upon what I believe.
The picture that's been put out, that was put out in April, is more of a scenario of who we think may be more involved in the other. We're not saying that the other one is not him. With the information that we've gotten in tips and interviews that we've been having over the last 2 years, that we feel that this face may be more of what the subject looks like. And so that's why we've kind of changed directions, went to this one, and we're still pretty adamant that that's the person that we're looking for.
There was some confusion and some blame and some criticism of us. That criticism needs to come to me, not to anybody else, because I absolutely supported that change. And I think there will be enough similarities in this person when we find him that we'll be able to see it in both.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely, I just have a feeling that it's somewhere in the middle. Mm-hmm. So when everything happened in the beginning, I didn't have a face. Like, I have really bad nightmares, and so we didn't have a face. And then, like, I don't know, like a week later, like before the sketch was released, he suddenly had one, and it was not the new sketch, not the old one, but it was somewhere in the middle. Mm-hmm. And so I always try to figure out what that face is. Like, maybe I do know him, maybe I have met him, and that's the face. Like, I'm giving it with the voice, I just don't know it yet.
Kelsey, you are spot on, and I wish everybody would look at this that way, because the similarities, let me back up. When people look at that sketch, they think, oh my gosh, that person is 20 years younger than the initial one, and they view it as a photograph. Mm-hmm. That is not what a sketch is. And it's really, really, really important people look at it like you do, mm-hmm. and understand that it's going to be somewhere in the middle, or there'll be some similarities between those with a bookend photo that I know we're going to get one day.
Yeah. And I'm really looking forward to the day I can look in his eyes and tell him how much I don't like him. I'm looking forward to that day.
Yeah, I'll stand with you.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Multi-agency task force clarifies points about the Delphi murder suspect sketches. In the early days and months of the Delphi murder investigation, information was developed about suspect descriptions. It was initially believed the sketch that has been in public view over the last 2 years of a person in the age range of his 40s to 50s was a person of interest in this murder investigation. Now, as the investigation has matured and past information has been reassessed, it is the belief of investigators with the multi-agency task force that the person depicted in the sketch released on April 22nd more accurately represents the person wanted for the murders of Abigail Williams and Liberty German. It is important to distinguish these points about the two sketches. 1, they are not the same person. 2, the person depicted in the originally released sketch is not presently a person of interest in this investigation. Note, they didn't say not presently a suspect. 3, the sketch released on April 22nd is representative of the face of the person captured in the video on Liberty German's cell phone as he was walking on the high bridge.
Specific information that says the person is local or from far away? No. Could this be a stranger crime? That's a possibility. Could this be somebody that knew that the girls were going to be there at that time? That's a possibility. Nothing is off the table.
To date, how many persons of interest and suspects have police looked at, and what makes a person a person? What makes a person a suspect as opposed to a person of interest?
Well, everybody's a person of interest in almost anything that we do. And I can't speak specifically to this with the number of people that there are, but again, we work these from the worst case scenario and then backwards. So that number would be a lot, but that would be up to the detectives, not me.
So if we didn't evolve with information and we didn't evolve with what we know, then shame on us. Unfortunately, we're not in a position where we can tell everybody why we switch gears, why we make a slight turn to the right or a slight turn to the left. And that's where the speculation begins, and that's where the animosity comes and the frustration. And I understand it. I do understand it. Because very selfishly, there's other than the family of Abby and Libby in that community up there, there's nobody that wants to find this monster more than me.
In the past, you've said we have likely interviewed the killer. Do you still think that?
I think that we're not going to singularly identify anyone right now, at least publicly.
I'd like to talk about these two sketches that were released years apart by investigators. The images have caused quite a bit of speculation, also some confusion. Are there two suspects that you're looking for?
There are not. There are not. I saw some coverage tonight where I saw Becky Patty was interviewed back in 2019 when that was done, and she said tonight it was like a gut punch, and I felt that gut punch tonight because I would never ever intentionally cause that to happen. Again, this is very strategic, and I really believe, Marnie, that eventually we're going to take both of those sketches. Remember, a sketch is not a photograph, but we'll take both of those sketches and we'll put them together and then remove them, and the killer will be behind them.
So is the sketch Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
I was just going to ask, is the sketch, how does the public receive this information? Is the sketch, the ultimate suspect, a combination of these two images put on this body that we're seeing on screen right now?
Yes, I believe that we'll be able to put the two of them together and drop the sketch, and that will be the person responsible for the death of Abby and Libby.
We have to remember and realize this was such a high-profile case, as it should have been, and as it still is, frankly, that there is a lot still to this day going on the internet with people communicating and talking in different groups and putting side-by-side comparisons with a coworker or whoever that might be. Eventually, they're going to be right. Or eventually, we're going to be right. Or you're going to be right. Whatever.